Good morning, evening, afternoon. Today we are playing Echoes, a Lucid9 fan game previously. And we were talking to Miki, who knows about Yama and is trying to kind of tell us who did things to Yama and why Yama is currently in the state he's in. And we also learned about District 3 and like this circle sort of area with no cars and clean air and whatnot. And now we're going up to the 444th floor, 444, the death number, and the Kazahai Combine Super Building, where we're going to meet Satomi, and we're on the elevator of death. And that is where we left off. Well, Miki did say her mom didn't want to have any of those pesky death-fearing types working for her. I suppose that includes those of us who are afraid of heights. Rather, falling from them. At the very least, I don't have to worry about Yama falling to his death. Just me and everyone else and this translucent death pipe. How tall is this building, Miki? 1,720 meters. Excuse me? Don't be embarrassed, Nine. At heights like these, it's normal to get a bit queasy. I bet queasy is right. If this thing starts falling, all that kinetic energy will blend us into a cranberry catastrophe with extra protein. How'd you manage to build something this tall without a mass hypoxia event? The same way we built much of District 3, with heavy machinery, materials flown in by air, and several thousand tons of liquid oxygen. Admirably, Limnisgate is in the process of building a tower that will eventually surpass the Lotus in height. But in terms of elevation, let's just say my mother wanted an unobstructed view of the mountains. All the mountains. Arriving at floor 444, office of CEO Satomi Kazahaya. Identity verified as Corporate President Misaki Kazahaya, Black Star Security Sentinel Corps. Access granted. Welcome back, Ojo-sama. Your quest will soon be in the presence of the Oyabun. Please remind them to behave themselves. Well, this looks awfully creepy. Just a pool. A giant pool in a very foggy looking room. Wait, is this supposed to be Satomi's office? The pinnacle from which she watches over the rest of the district? The front room looks like a bathhouse. Our guests have arrived, Mother. I take it they're still in one piece then. I had to change her voice because this is not the voice of the person I was using during the little meetings with the 3 chairmen. But since I'm using the original Kazaha Combine's voice for Misaki, she needs to get a new voice. A woman with 3 swords strapped across her back, turns towards the light of the setting moon, her pale skin obstructed by an ornate canvas of tattoos. It's only when she rises out of the water that I catch a true glimpse of her stature. Well, that's less tattoos than I thought you would have. I've been told that your negotiation with DCAS were a failure, Misaki. Is this something you can verify? As her title and reputation weren't already intimidating enough, Misaki's mother has to be at least 7.5 feet tall, maybe more. Also, were you just in this pool with all of these swords? That does not seem comfortable. I'm not sure why she's wearing a swimsuit to a business meeting, but at this point, I'm too afraid to ask. They were about as cooperative as we expected. So, it was a resounding failure then. Excellent. But if they must object, they are within their right to do so. It's quite understandable that such a paranoid and self-interested ally would struggle with matters that required foresight. A chill runs down my spine as Satomi shifts her gaze towards me. Ada? Is this who I think it is? Something tells me this is going to be a long and very uncomfortable conversation. It's good to see you again, Hayata-kun. Chairman Saito speaks quite highly of you. I hope you'll forgive me for having you brought here in person, but I wanted to confirm for myself that your strength of body and mind weren't exaggerated by Kosuke's reports. You are cybernetically enhanced, are you not? Yes, ma'am. I see. Is she gonna attack me? Like, is she going to try to fight me? Because she's like, let's see how strong you are. I must admit that when I first heard of Way4's intent to augment its personnel in such a manner, I opposed it quite vehemently. You must already know that while modifying the human form in such a manner is not prohibited under our code, we frown upon the use of strength that is not rightfully earned. A weapon is useless in the hands of poorly trained warrior, but without restraint, control, and principle, a warrior is no more than a mindless agent of destruction. I'm sure your corporation realizes how dangerous it is to blur the lines between body and blade. If you were to blindly grant this power, it would not only be a grave insult to your most disciplined masters, but you would soon find that your most unruly would not be above abusing it. When the unruly learn that they may act with impunity, nothing will stop them from walking the path of dishonor. If their behavior is not corrected, It is inevitable that they will continue to fight cruelly and without wisdom. You, however, Hayata-kun, you have long since served alongside your corporation, friends, and family without error. You possess not only the strength of character, but the strength of will to be worthy of such an honor. And I must say, you're quite well endowed these days. I can see why my Misaki has such a crush on you. Mother! I didn't mean it that way, Misaki. Besides, it's 2041, isn't it? With a few collaborations, you could boost traffic to your Ona fan page by at least 30%. If it's any consolation, a majority of your photos shoots wouldn't appear outside of District 3. The Bugeisha sees to think censorship is the best way to maintain moralistic society. I really wish I wasn't here right now. But I digress. I know you seek Kazahaya Combine's assistance in fighting this infection. Let me state outright, at this point I am more than willing to convert my factories into production facilities for the injections way forward requires. Under normal circumstances, I would be able to do so easily. Unfortunately, one of those factories has begun to exhibit some troubling behavior. Oh, it's serious time because music is playing. In case you don't already know of the Birdsong Collective, I'll explain the nature of the organization as quickly as possible. When Black Star Security was contracted to enforce the law in District 6, many celebrated our arrival as well as our immediate efforts to protect its population against violent crime, drug trafficking, and the rule of criminals over the weak and impoverished. Our efforts produced lasting results, and as was our duty, we continue to provide for the people of District 6, where the government had not. As for today, Kazahaya Combine has paid for thousands of food banks, shelter beds, artificially created jobs, and has even gone so far as to cover the construction and operation costs of many of Way Forward's non-profit clinics in Isamu. By the articles of the Mirai Kite, the future something. We were obligated to provide order and aid to the unorganized and defenseless, but our code only goes so far as to protect those who abide by it. It does not extend to the cyber terrorist organization that has taken responsibility for numerous actual and attempted electronic attacks on the corporations of Trifex. Normally, these range from distributed denial of service attacks to redirections of corporate billboards and DNS addresses to force messages of slander, fear-mongering, and disobedience upon the unwilling. While the Birdsong Collective claims to be a collection of anarchists striving for the freedoms of the individual community, policing open source technology and citizen rule, we prefer to call them what they are: a nuisance. In late 2038, before DCAS knew what they were up against, they managed to circulate a piece of firmware that allows people to disconnect their electronic devices from Limnitscape's built-in surveillance modules. Keep in mind, Limnitscape designed these surveillance modules to be as widespread as possible, even going so far as to have them in the possession and distribution of all consumer electronic devices without them criminalized in Isamu. Despite Limnitscape banning any hardware or firmware modification of any of their devices not directly owned or managed by major corporations, tampering still continues to this day, no doubt spurred on by the Birdsong Collective's efforts. What DCIS won't tell you, however, is that their response was slow enough for the Birdsong Collective to find a way to bypass their censors for over a month. This allowed them to use the internet to organize most of the protests against the Isamu Police Department in District 6 without government interference. For their failure to stop the independent killings, the mass murder at the Isamu Imperial Boarding Academy, they publicly called for its defunding and eventual abolition. They were listened to, and the police in District 6 were eventually defunded and replaced by us. Unfortunately for them. They were laboring under the misconception that they could enforce the law themselves and have disputed the lawful authority of Black Star Security and District 6 ever since, typically by means of portraying us as an excessively violent organization during their cyber attacks. In the time since the Birdsong Collective initiated these hostilities, Black Star's Department of Technical Operations has strengthened our firewalls and network security to a point where we are virtually invulnerable to their more traditional methods of infiltration. I apologize for taking so long, but knowing the enemy is vital, and all what I just told you relates to the situation I mentioned earlier. At 01:25 hours today, one of our munitions factories in District 3 was internally disconnected from Black Star's communications network without explanation. Given the sensitive nature of the goods manufactured there, the entire factory was locked down by remotely deactivated hardware kill circuit. The doors were sealed shut. Its connection to the power grid was terminated, and I dispatched 4 Sentinel teams to keep an eye on the situation and deploy jammers if those responsible attempted to initiate wireless communications with an external party. Initially, I expected the ILF to be behind this, but they made a habit of destroying every facility they come across. That, and they're not the most technologically experienced. The Birdsong Collective, however, is known to use microcryptors in their cyber attacks. And if they are indeed responsible for this aggression, it would explain why we found the accursed devices interfering with our hardware. In order to activate the aforementioned lockdown process, it took 171 seconds for us to deploy a defensive line of our own microcryptors. But at that point, whoever did this could have called for reinforcements. If you're interested, Hayata-kun, I have a proposition for you. What would that be, ma'am? Satomi grins. Something tells me she isn't planning to resolve this situation peacefully. As you may have already guessed, my sentinels currently have the command have commandeered factory surrounded have the commandeered factory surrounded, and in 2 hours I plan on deploying an entire heavy infantry company to knock on their doors, so to speak. The only major difference is that instead of their fists, they'll be using a steady barrage of Amaterasu grenades. Amaterasu grenades. Well, I intend to give whoever is behind those blast doors the chance to pick up their weapons before they engage us. I've dedicated an exorbitant amount of firepower to this mission in order to ensure its success. If you're interested, your squad is welcome to join us. Well, this isn't a prerequisite for my assistance. It presents an excellent opportunity for you to prove yourself in battle. I wonder if I actually get a choice or if this is something that I'm just going to do. In addition to this, You will be well compensated. I'm willing to offer you and anyone else in the way forward sends 20 million yen each in exchange for their services in this operation. What do you think, Hayata-kun? $20 million is a lot of money. If I were working for anyone else, I'd be tempted to accept on the spot. I shift my gaze discreetly. I shift my gaze to discreetly evaluate the contingent of guards in autonomous turrets behind Satomi. Looks like she has 8 sentinels in heavy armor stationed up here, not to mention the 40-odd 30mm rotary machine guns mounted on the walls, ready to spin up at a moment's notice. I'm not really in a position to refuse her, considering most of those guns are already pointed at me. For now, my best option is to lie and say I'm on board with it. I'd be telling the truth if I mentioned needing the chairman's approval, though. I'll relay your offer to the chairman. If he is willing to greenlight the op, the Lucid cell will help you breach the facility. Excellent. Until that happens, feel free to enjoy your time in District 3. Misaki. Yes, Mother. Please show our guest to the armory. The quartermaster has prepared a gift for them, and if they'd like, I've already cleared them to purchase any ammo they need from us. That, and if they're interested in sampling some of the unique services our district has to offer, please make sure they don't make any typical newcomer mistakes. Kigashimasu. Rikai shimasu. I don't know why I saw it as a K. Thank you, Misaki. I hope you all take advantage of your training as a hostess. Negotiating with that geisha master on your behalf was not an easy task. Why are we all geishas? I'm sure my helmet soundproof function is doing its job. I attempt to open a channel to the cell commander. Lucid9 to base. Do you copy, Lucid1? Loud and clear, operative. Need something? Mind patching me through to the chairman, ma'am? I need information on my orders. I'll see if I can get him on the horn. One sec.
Saito speaking.
Chairman, this is Operative Lucid9. You neglected to mention that we'd be working for the mob.
Kazahaya Combine is not a criminal organization, Hayata. They are as legitimate as we are.
Well, we'll see how working for the mob goes. I mean, a legitimate organization in the next episode.